In a $10 million Super Bowl ad, former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg used 60 seconds on America's biggest TV stage to address gun control. The campaign ad featured the mother of George Kemp Jr., a 20-year-old man who lost his life to gun violence in Texas back in 2013.
When I heard Mike was stepping into the ring, I thought, now we have a dog in the fight. I know Mike is not afraid of the gun lobby. They're scared of him.
Now, along with President Trump, former New York City Mayor Bloomberg was the only Democratic candidate to air a national ad during Sunday's game. And that's not the only thing that makes his campaign strategy a little bit different. Bloomberg has been notably absent from Iowa, instead choosing to focus on delegate-rich Super Tuesday states like California. Joining me now is Sabrina Singh. She's the national spokesperson for Mike Bloomberg. Sabrina, we'll get to that campaign ad in just a moment, but first, Bloomberg is investing so much in California, but he's still lagging behind in the polls. Is your strategy there really working?
You know, we're seeing huge returns, actually. We're seeing Michael Bloomberg actually going up in the polls. And while we're not seeing that in necessarily Iowa or Nevada or South Carolina in the early states, we are seeing him going up nationally. I think he was just third in the latest Reuters poll that came out, just trailing right behind Bernie Sanders. I think it was Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and then Mayor Bloomberg. So we actually are feeling the momentum on our side. And we actually feel that the ad campaign that we're running, whether it's on TV or digital, is really making an impact with voters all across the country.
Could any other candidate really pull this off without the kind of personal wealth that a Bloomberg has? I've heard more than once, and I'm quoting here, Democrats don't like people who buy elections. Does that sting for you guys?
Well, I actually think that it's somewhat insulting to voters to think that we're buying an election without thinking that voters can actually make the decision for themselves. I think this really comes down to Mike has the resources to compete everywhere. He did only enter the race November 21st, so we're looking at a very condensed timeline where he was actually able to get out there and make his message heard to voters. We knew that we were not going to be able to compete in the early states. He just it was too soon of a timeline. So we had to go far and wide and go to the delegate-rich states like you just talked about, California and Texas and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, all across the battlegrounds that we know are central to winning in November and where, frankly, Donald Trump has been campaigning this entire cycle. And Michael Bloomberg is the only one who has been going to those states more often than not. I think today I looked at where we've hit 24 states and over 58 cities. I mean, no other campaign is going to those battleground states right now, and only Michael Bloomberg is.
Would he have gone to Iowa if he had announced earlier?
I don't know. I can't predict what he would have done earlier, but right now we're in it to win it, and we're in it through those battleground states, and we're excited to see what comes out of the Iowa caucuses tonight, but really looking forward to Super Tuesday.
Let's go back to that campaign ad. Sabrina, Americans have consistently said that they favor stricter gun control laws, but then they vote for candidates who don't take action on gun control. Why does the Bloomberg campaign feel like this issue can win the election or win the nomination and the election for them?
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I mean, Lucy McBath came in on the, in Georgia on the premise of, losing her son to gun violence. We know gun violence, this is an issue that's not divisive to Americans. Like you said, 90% of Americans support background checks. This is something where Mike has been a real leader on it when he was as mayor and then creating, Everytown for Gun Safety after he left the mayor's office. Gun violence affects, black and brown communities. It doesn't matter your religion, your ethnicity, your race. It affects everyone. And so we know this is an issue that not only that Mike has been leading on, but something that we can win on as well. So
you just mentioned African-American voters, voters of color. One of the things that people have said about this ad is that it helps, it's a very important issue, especially among some communities of color. But as a mayor of New York City, Mike Bloomberg was criticized for stop and frisk. And many people have said that that has done harm to his ability to really cultivate the African-American vote. What type of outreach are you doing to the black community?
Well, I think when it comes in regards to stop and frisk, Mike has certainly apologized for, I think learning much later sort of the devastating effects that it had on communities and families, across New York City. But one of the first things he did when he announced his presidential bid was announce a criminal justice reform policy plan that laid out, I think like not only just lessening incarceration rates, but also making sure that we are repairing and working with Black and brown communities all across the country. So I think it's lessons learned and lessons that he would take to the White House when he gets elected.
Okay. The president and your candidate have been trading taunts on Twitter. And in fact, President Trump made some comments mocking Bloomberg's height. He even told Fox News that Bloomberg requested a box to stand on for the debates. Bloomberg responded, and I want to play for our viewers a bit of that sound.
I stand twice as tall as he does on the stage that matters. And this is what happens when somebody like me rises in the polls. All of a sudden, the other candidates get scared. And I think Donald Trump knows that I can beat him. And that's why he comes back with those kinds of comments.
I can beat him. Is that really the rallying cry for Mayor Mike? And how much are you viewing the president's tweets as an endorsement?
I don't know about an endorsement, but certainly when you're getting under the president's skin,
it works.
Well, when you're getting under the president's skin and he's creating nicknames for you and tweeting about you and, at all times during the night and making, trying to poke fun at you, I think that you're doing something right. You've gotten under his skin. You've proven to be a competitor. I think we've seen the president's aim shifted all across this race, and now it's on Mike. And I think rightfully it's going to stay on Mike. What the president says, we all know that's lies. Michael Bloomberg hasn't even qualified for the debates yet, although we feel very confident that we will. So requesting a box, I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, well, since you're bringing up debates, so far your candidate has not qualified for any of them. Has it hurt you in terms of national exposure?
Well, the DNC did recently change their rules to change it more towards qualifying, or if you receive a delegate out of Iowa. Mike was
You're not expecting a delegate out of Iowa,
I don't think so. That would be really unexpected. Mike was never going to take money from anyone. He is running this race as this only donor, which means he's not beholden to those special interests. But one of the debate requirements of the DNC was to have, I think it was over 250,000 unique donors, and we were just never going to do that. We were never going to ask people for money. And now that the DNC has changed their requirements and allowed it just to be polling or a delegate coming out of Iowa, we feel really good. We feel confident that we will be on the debate stage either in Nevada or in the future debates. It's time for people to hear Mike's voice and why he's running, what he stands for, and how he is the best one to beat Donald Trump in November.
So you mentioned removing that individual donor requirement that the DNC had before for the debates. Did they do that for the Bloomberg campaign?
Absolutely not. The DNC definitely, I used to work at the DNC and I was there when some of these debate rules were coming into place. The DNC always said that they were going to change and mold the debate rules as the race went on. I think it totally makes sense to look at, who's coming out of Iowa with the most votes or delegate share and make that part of the requirement. Look, they raised the polling threshold. We haven't qualified for that yet. We only have one qualifying poll so far. So to say it benefits us, that's just not true. And you'd have to ask the DNC that, and I know they would say the same thing.
All right. Before I let you go, besides President Trump, who does Mayor Mike Bloomberg see as his biggest competition?
Well, I think the field is still so wide open, but I think we're certainly looking at the top four right now. They're the biggest threat, and we'll have to see what comes out of Iowa. But I think the person that emerges strong from Iowa and New Hampshire is going to be the one that we look at and see how well we can best them in the Super Tuesday states.
Sabrina Singh, thank you so much.
Thank you.